Okay, it's recording. Sorry. It normally goes, it's recording, but it didn't say anything. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Uh, okay, what's going on here? Oh, my goodness. Aha. Right. You think I'd get used to it by now using Zoom point, but I never do. It's like my brain suddenly freezes when it comes to technology. So yes, welcome all to this week's course on spilling the tea, the art of reading the leaves. So before I go into it, I will be talking about my background in tea leaf reading. I'll be talking about the history of tea leaf reading. I would be talking about different methods for reading just for yourself, for others, and people at a distance. I will go into the also like the symbology used and in tea leaf reading and how to interpret it and methods in how you can do that. And then I will go into like some really good books that you can pick up and learning it for yourself. So first of all, I just want to go into my background of tea leaf reading. Tea leaf reading is something that was on my dad's side of the family, both on the marital side and the non-marital side of things. It's very confusing, so I'll just go into it. So you see here, this is my gran. It's the only picture we have of her. She died when my dad was 10 years old of a heart condition, sadly, so I never got to meet her. And basically, yeah, so she used to read the tea leaves with my great aunt Nora, which you see here. And I'll explain. So my Granny Esther, she was from Romany / English family. My my granddad actually met my granny when they were working on the barges. And at the time, barge was a really good way of sort of when transport was coming through into Britain, it was a really good way to sort of transport transport stuff throughout the counties and countries within Britain as well. And it became so that you could sort of live and work, that sort of way of life. And this appealed to both Roma, well, traveling folk or gypsies, depends how they refer themselves to, and to non-traveling folk. To the traveling folk, it meant that they were able to travel and live their way of life as well as get an income of transporting goods throughout Britain. And also, you might see that on barges, the design that you see on barges and old barges is very similar to the designs that you see on the traditional Vardo wagon, like traveling wagons, that whole floral design. And that is through influence through the traveling folk, sort of some, not a lot of them did, but some of them did move on to traveling on the barge. Means, like I said, they could have a steady income and travel and live their sort of way of life. But also, like my granddad, you know, anyone could sort of have this trade. And my great granddad moved from Aberdeenshire way, and then they worked on the barge with my granddad, and that's how they met, basically. So my granddad was non-Roma, just someone, and anyone can work on the barge as well. Met a Romney slash English family while doing on the barge, because barges pass each other like ships in the night, and that's how they met. So yeah, so my granny has, and you can kind of see that the shape of her face. Unfortunately, I take after my, not unfortunately, or I take after my mum's side of the family that's Irish. And my dad is very much takes after, well, he's, God bless his soul, took after it, the features of my gran, and you can see in her face that the features, the long face, the nose, the dark hair. She was a nurse, by the way, as well. So the cart that you see there, she's leaning on, is the cart that they would do horse and cart to bring the medications in. Yeah, and also another fact is that I'm born on her birthday. We have double eights, so I was the 8th of the 10th, 1987. She's the 8th of the 10th, 1908. So yeah, but so we'll go on to my Auntie Nora. So my Auntie Nora was from, she married my granny's brother, my Uncle Alf, or Alfie, as they used to call him. And she was of Irish English descent, so her mother was Irish. That a lot of them were traveled, like my own gran, to England to find work. But yeah, so her granny was not her granny. Her mother was from Ireland. I think Donegal. I think. My memory is really terrible, and she learned her own self, for her family, a different way of tea leaf reading. And so yeah, so the gist of it, so my granny, she knew how to read tea leaves for her mother, and my Auntie Nora knew how to read tea leaves for her mother, but very different sides of the culture. So like you have my granny obviously is from like more the Romany sort of culture of reading it, and then my Auntie Nora was obviously through English slash probably more Irish ways of reading the leaves. And they were really good friends. They became best friends, in fact, and it's actually through my Auntie Nora that I know a lot about my granny, because when my dad being young and his brothers were quite young, they didn't have many memories of her. So it was through her like I really know about my gran. And yes, this is a picture of her holding me right there in the knitted jumper that she made me, the knitted thing that she made me. So yeah, so they were really good friends. So when they used to have friends around at each other's houses, they would get the obviously everyone drank loose tea. This was a time before tea bags, so everyone drank loose tea, but not everyone could read the leaves, unless you could pick up a pamphlet or a booklet from a news magazine. But yeah, they would afterwards, when everyone was finished their tea and the sort of gathering would come to end, my Auntie Nora and my grandma would go around the table reading everyone's tea leaves. So yeah, it was really nice. And I suppose like it was really like they kind of blended. They probably, I mean, from what my Auntie Nora was saying, like, my gran had her different ways of reading the leaves, and so did she for her mother. And they used to kind of like combine them too. So I guess when they first started doing it, they just kind of did their own separate fingers. They went around the table in their own way. And my Auntie Nora said towards the end, that they were kind of like mismatching each other's way of doing tea leaf reading. So by the time when I was like really interested in it, when I was 13, no, actually I was younger, as 8 years old, I hear her talking about doing the tea leaf reading, and talking about my gran doing it, and how these these tea parties and stuff. And by the way, they're not upper class, so the tea wouldn't be great. It would be very standard loose tea. just to smart that out. But yes, so eventually, what my auntie Nora taught me then when I was 13, as I became more into like folk magic and fortune telling and mysticism, at the time Wicca as well. My aunt, I would badger her like, I'd be like, so teach me, show me this, and she would sit down and she would tell me how she would do it, what each symbols that should see in the in the cup, and how each one connected to each other. And she told me, and it's the way I do it with tarot as well, she told me read it like a storybook. So once you know your symbols, once you know the positionings of the cup, you can read it like a story. And that's what I do with tarot as well. So I don't really read tarot traditionally. I read it very so I have tarots that have that are busy tarot that has a lot of pictures and stuff, because I read it like a storybook, as opposed to, oh, this is the 9 of Wands, it means this. So it's probably through my teaching of doing the tea leaves that's why I read tarot the same way. So yes, and I actually read with I don't know what so my auntie Nora had a china set. This is my grand's. My auntie Nora had a china set, but I think when she died, it went to her side of the family and not us. I would have wished to just have at least had one cup and saucer. But I have my grand's set. I keep one that I use for reading with, tea leaf reading. Sorry, she wants to. Do you want to read your tea leaves? Yeah, well, it's all good for you. You should be. You're well treated. So yes. So these and back in the day, when you were working class people, like both my side of the family were, you would only get like a bone china set like at special occasions, mostly at weddings. So this set, I used one that I leave out, and the whole set, well, some of the sets it's not complete and probably broken over the years with my dad's clumsiness. So it's not complete. Yeah, so this was gifted to her on her wedding day, this china set, and everyone put towards it, put money in the pot, and they bought her a china set, as long with, like, you'd traditionally get them a broom for the house, and little trinkets, that for your new home as a marital people. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, a lot of times it would be weddings or birthdays that you'd get bone china like this. This is Crown Royal, and I love it because I don't know why, like they have Herb Robert. I don't know if you could see there. This I actually searched it a couple of years ago, and I think this set's going for like 200-300 quid now. Yeah, I would never sell them, and it's going to get passed down to whoever of my nieces or nephews. But yeah, it's Herb Robert. I used to think they were forget me nots, but it's Herb Robert. But yeah, there was also Language of the Flowers, which I'll explain later in another book I'll recommend. So each what flower you would gift someone would have a meaning to it. So like a forget me not would be like, oh, may your love never be forgotten and whatnot. Herb Robert, I tried to look into it, and I couldn't really find any kind of traditional meanings to Herb Robert, other than, like, the general of happiness and joy. But yeah, I feel like maybe like whoever bought the set was just like, oh, that's pretty enough, and didn't know the Language of Flowers. But yeah, the flowers on your cup really had meaning as well, that you were gifted someone. So roses are passion and a little bit, fiery love. Violets are gentle and more sensitive kind of love. So there's all sorts of things. Language of Flowers, and it all stems from the Victorian era of that. So I will go on to spoke about my background, and basically, my auntie North taught me with she told me how she practices now. Like, well, she's passed now, I'm afraid, but she told me how she practiced like in modern day at the time, and how she was taught from her mom, and then she also told me what she knew of how my gran used to read them. Um, so I just go by Auntie Nora's way, because towards the end of her life, there was the whole both skills of each side of her family and my grand's, they kind of clashed anyway and combined with each other, because they were the only ones that would read around the table. So yes, I go into the history of tea leaf reading. So tea leaf reading came about, and it has its origins, also known as tassography. Tassography. I can never pronounce some of the the Latin names for all different kind of divination. But yeah, tassography. And it is placed in, like, has traditions placed in Asia, mid-Asia, Greece, Mid and Eastern cultures, particularly using coffee. So you will see like Turkish are very renowned. They predict stuff through the coffee. I don't quite like it. I think it's too strong for me. Although I'm yet still to try different kinds of Turkish coffee, because I've been told that there's different varieties, and I really need to go to a proper Turkish coffee house to really try. But the one that my mate gave me, I was like, oh no, it's a bit too strong. Like, it's taking my breath away. But yeah, so parts of like Turkey, Greece, were more, and Asia were more to do with coffee, and it's a very different coffee that we see today. It's kind of muddy, thick, and it was actually but through tea leaf reading, actually what we know of today from the 17th century actually come through China, because China has a long tradition of more tea drinking than coffee, where you can see in Greece and Turkey. And so the idea is that these traditions of tassography is stemming from these Eastern traditions, and as the tea and coffee imports into Europe and Britain, these traditions are going with the importers from hand to hand. And also that what will come next is, it developed, oh yeah, so it also, tea leaf reading, is why it was seen so mystic way of reading your fortunes, is because it was believed that it would develop, because it believed that life was discussed under a cup. So all your, while you're sitting at a table having cups of tea, gossip was talking about, news was talking about, and sometimes sad times were talking about, deaths, and grieving, is under a cup of tea as well. But really, it is through the Romani travelers that are spreading it throughout Europe, because they are taking also, it's perfect trade for them. Like I talk about the barges, it's perfect trade. They're traveling throughout Europe anyway. That's their lifestyle. So they can take on trades of little imports from different harbors into different parts of Europe. And obviously, Romani people, or Romani, they are rich with traditions and folk customs and folk belief. I guess when they were transporting it from the bay and whatever, for the people of the hands where these tea was coming from China, they probably taught them a few things about how to read them. And people in China and even parts of Japan, they still read tea leaf reading, like tea leaves. It's part of their culture. It's probably a lot different to the way Western society reads tea leaves than Eastern, because from China and Japan, because the clashing of cultures and Chinese whispers and people attaching their own symbology to it, depending what culture you are throughout Europe. But yeah, it was really through the Romani people, and that's why they were associated with them for so long, of tea leaf reading and tarot and palmistry. They were really the spreaders of fortune telling and divinationary methods. They would even go to like door to door as well, reading tea leaves and stuff. So they'll bring along their kettle and a cup and whatever, and they do have a little chat. Once they're finished, they'll read the leaves. Also, traveling folks were well known for mending pots and pans and kettles. There was well gifted in metal trade, especially with tin, working with tin. So I suppose that trade is with them, mending kettles, pots and pans. Maybe while the husband's doing that, the wife is sitting with a cup of tea with their wife, and reading tea leaves for a shilling or two. And yeah, so and then it goes for, it really is there through them bringing that tea culture and divination through Europe, and then spreading on to originally the upper classes, but then eventually, by the time of the 30s, even working class people could afford tea. And then such things as like tea rooms and parlors where the tea leaf reader could offer readings to the guests. However, I must stress this: like tarot, tea leaf readings not restricted just to the Romani people, and it's not a closed practice. It is like tarot. It is practiced in many traditions, in many kinds of ways, and it's something that is just not spread through culture. It's spread through subcultures and spread through popularity of things, and we see how this happens. In my day it was yo-yos that with cogs and stuff, and pogs and marbles and stuff like that. So as trends happen, obviously that spreads out in different cultures. So trend and culture is very different, and that's how tarot and tea leaf reading and crystal ball gazing happen, is through the trend of the day, as spiritualism and the Enlightenment period rise, spiritualism and Celtic revivalism as well is spurring from it at this time. So divination and fortune telling is an interest from the the late 18th 19th century onwards, and still happening. People are interested into fortune telling and spiritualism. So so traditionally, and this is probably why I probably broke the chain of this tradition. That's why my gran and my great aunt knew only how to read the tea leaves. So traditionally, it was only taught from mother to daughter, from generation to generation, and it seems to be around more the female line than the male. Like I said, I broke the chain, but there again, we live in a society where equality is key, and and gender roles is completely cut away from the situation, gladly, and gender has been looked at very differently as today as it should be. I won't go into that, but yes, so basically, it doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man, you can practice tea leaf reading, but traditionally it was from from woman, from mother to daughter, and so on forth. So tea leaf reading, like fortune telling and spiritualism, really boomed during the 30s, during like the Second World War, and that is due because fortune telling, because they wanted a lot of the women, the wives of these people that have gone off to war, they want to predict the outcome of if they're going to come home or not, or they're going to come back in a coffin, and that's why a lot of divinationary simple ones, simple methods of divination comes from the 1930s, and then also after that, spiritualism, after the World War, because spiritualism, people want to contact their dead husbands and relatives from the war. So during the war, it is fortune telling that's a boom, and divination, and then after the war, it's spiritualism that takes a real boom, or a second sort of boom. in popularity. Then by the 40s onwards, chapbooks, newspaper pamphlets like the one that is the photocopy that I've sent out to you in the email, and also you'll see examples on here. So newspapers and chapbooks were publishing wee fortune-telling materials such as palmistry, divining with playing cards, and of course tea leaf reading. And that then actually allowed, where it used to be, you know, only certain people could read the tea leaves or read the cards, like I said, from woman to woman, or like in case of my granny and my great aunt, it allowed like anyone in the general public to sort of read the cards or palmistry or the tea leaves, or reading moles as well, and birthmarks and stuff. So it was something, you know, then everyone didn't need that special guest to come to the tea party. It means that now the person organising the tea party could have this pamphlet and be like, oh, let me see what your cup says. I don't think it would have been as good, because I think it takes a technique. It really does take practice and technique to read the tea leaves, and it's something that it's not picked up overnight, and certainly not just reading from a pamphlet, as with anyone that does any kind of form of divination would know, like should know. So we're going to then also in the 40s, companies start mass producing like fortune telling cups. So the pamphlet that I've sent out to you all, this is from this cup, which is from the 1940s. I think it was Royal Doulton that first did it. And then you had ones that's very rigid with, oh God, I'm always doing this, very rigid with like kind of, you know, boxed in. And then you have ones that are, yeah, so this one's from the early late 30s, I believe, as well. So this is an early introduction here. And then you have ones which were from my youth here, where it would come in a wee box and pamphlets and cards and stuff like that, how to read it. And I hope you can all see me scoring with the arrows here. So the first one, and then in this one here, which you can see today in most esoteric stores or new age shops, is this one here. And this also can, I guess, read your stars. I don't know, I've never worked with it, but yes, I have on that subject, I have one. It's not as old, but this one's from the 70s. Oh God, I'm trying to, that bloody light. Right, what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn the light off just for a wee sec so you can see the symbol. So that's the base of the cup, and it has all your zodiac signs, and are basically, according to the booklet, which I'll show in a minute, even zodiac signs can have certain divinatory meanings, like, or if it's Libra, which is mine, or it means balance, maybe law is forthcoming, something to do with law or going to court. And then you have inside the cup, you can have stuff like symbols, 2 keys, a hand, a letter, a knife, a snake, all sorts of things. This one's only from the 70s, and this is the wee booklet it comes with. It's kind of like it's obviously been in the light for too long because it's sun damaged, but yeah, it's a cool wee booklet that comes with it. Sadly, I couldn't get the box that goes with it. It didn't come. Always, oh, that's a bit too much. Let me see. That's better. Yeah, and going on to pamphlets, like, so here's I'll turn it off again so you can see. We'll just turn it down, that's it. So here's like when you could find little pamphlets on fortune telling. Here's one I've got from the 1820s. It doesn't mention anything about tea leaf reading, because obviously tea is quite a new thing by the at the time of the 1820s, but it does talk about how to read moles and fortune tell by cards. But yeah, you can see this one. And I have original of that, which is my little baby, and this is called The Fortune Teller or the Universal Book of Fate. And I love this one because it has like a tree with all numbers, and you're supposed to pick a number at random from the leaf, and then it will tell you the meaning from it. And it also tells you all sorts of things like reading by cards and moles and stuff like that. You can find it in my book, you know, The Visions of the Spy Wife, the history and practice of modern practitioners and fortune telling of Scotland in the Visions of the Spy Wife. I have that, and also the Spy Wife chapbook. But yeah, in the 1940s, by the 1940s and stuff, they wouldn't look any kind of different really. This little pamphlets that you'd get free with a magazine, or maybe you'd buy it for like you know, a penny or so from your newsstand. So that's how people, generally the masses, start to learn how to do fortune telling, such as you know, tea leaf reading. That's it. So yes, I have that. I have quite a collection of fortune telling stuff. Since writing my book, you know, the Visions of the Spy Wife, I become obsessed. So my collection's growing larger and larger. But yeah, when I was young, although I couldn't afford it, this one here, which was what was popular around the 90s. But I kind of didn't want it anyway, because, like, you know, I've always been one for tradition, and I was just like, I just, like, some of my spiritual friends will go to Waterstones and stuff, and we're like, I know how to do this without a cup. But it's still fun. It's nice for those people that, you know, I guess again, these cups allowed for the general public that didn't know the intents were, you know, art of reading the leaves. It allowed them, you know, to predict it by, you know, what leaves go on what symbol, and then look in the book what it means. So I'll talk about different methods of reading the leaves. So I'll show, basically I'm going to teach what I was taught. So reading for yourself, there's a whole sort of ritual that goes on with it. So I'll go into what kind of tea leaf reading. Well, first of all, yeah, I'll go into like sort of tea leaf reading and what kind of loose tea, and it has to be loose tea. It can't be tea bags, I'm afraid. Although someone once told me that you could. Someone said they could read tea from emptying the tea bags and stuff, but I never got a chance to sort of ask him how to do it. But yeah, you need, basically, first of all, you'll need a teapot that doesn't have a filter system and doesn't have too much of a thin snout. And that's because I mean, you want, this is perfect. I love these. You can get these from Chinese shops, Asian shops, and obviously going straight to the tradition and honoring that tradition as well by using their teapots. I love it because not like British teapots, it has a hole at the top to sort of help brew the tea and bring more air out of it. So it brews naturally. Yeah, again, it doesn't have a lot of modern teapots that you see now that will have like a filter system by the snout bit here underneath inside, and it'll be like wee holes. So you don't want that, but you do want a snout, like no filter, but you do want a snout that does come to a top quite finely, because then it will kind of thin out any kind of biggest bits, or not having too much of the leaves into your cup. For that, back in the day, it was because, you know, you didn't want a strong tea. If you didn't want too many leaves in your cup, it means that you have a strong tea. But also it makes it perfect, because if you have too many leaves in your cup, it'll be hard to sort of read the leaves. So yeah, I would say go for your local Asian shop or Chinese shop and get one of these. They're brilliant to work with when doing tea leaf reading. So I'll go into sort of types of tea. I mean, back in the day, it was a standard sort of Earl Grey that you could get, and that was all that was kind of available and was, well, cheap, affordable for working class. But now you can have like all sorts of things like English breakfast, Grey Lady, and all sorts of beautiful flavorsome tastes of tea. And but the most important, and this really goes down to the person that's doing it, so it's really down to what agrees to you, is you'll have coarse tea. So you'll have tea that's quite thick and twiggy, and then you'll have fine grain tea leaves, and these are a lot more finer, more more finer. Some examples. So this is one you can get from Holland and Barrett. I got, and it's called Celtian Tea Paradise, and it really is. It's okay. It's really just a standard loose tea. It's just like kind of like if you went for like a Tesco's own like tea or whatever, or PG Tips. But if it was something you just want to read with a few sips and then pour the rest, you can do that. But what I like with it is that it becomes quite coarse. So what I'm going to do is going to lower it down. Sorry about my crotch. So let me see. So if you can see, this is a lot more coarse. It's more twiggy. It's thicker and longer tea. If you can see here. So
would you have to use
so that's one
like
way. So is the coarse. Then you've got, which I'm going to give a shout out to Claire Mullen at the Bower Tree. She's just recently opened a store in Pitlochry, in Blairgowrie. So if you're in Blairgowrie, go check it out. She was kind enough when I last saw her, gifted me some of her tea. And she does tea leaf reading as well. And she refers to use finer leaf, which I'll show. It's probably best if I'm just showing it in my palm of my hand to the light. So if you could see here, it's a lot more finer. Kind of if you had like cloves, or if you ever come across dock flowers, dock seeds, they're kind of that, like kind of lumps of tea. So they're very fine, as opposed to this one here, where you see it's a lot more twiggy in that one. So yeah, if you do, shout out to her. If you do prefer to get some tea, she doesn't just do fine teas, she does do more coarse, twiggy like teas. I believe there's other words for these, but I'm just using terminology from my auntie Nora, my great auntie Nora, and she just like if it's twiggy or if it's fine, or but I think like proper tea experts will probably have different terminologies than me, but I'm just going by what I was taught. I'm not very much of a tea drinker either, so yes, I know, but I do, when I do have tea, I do like loose tea, because it's stronger. And when I do have tea and it's someone's house, I ask if they can put like 2 tea bags in, and that's because I'm so used to the strength of loose tea. So yeah, and for me, and like I said, this is really down to you. Experiment with what works best of how you can read tea leaves, or what you feel for you the pictures makes pictures and signs in the cup better for you to read. For me, I like a bit of both. So this is my blend here. So it is just basically a combination of fine and coarse, like that. And me personally, I like to use that because I find for me, the coarse and the fine sort of make up, like the coarse like tea makes really fine details of shapes, and the coarse makes like really kind of bigger pictures. So that's why like it really depends on who's practicing. Oh my god, I'm back there. So it really depends on you really. Like I said, the finer it makes smaller detail, and the coarse makes more bigger sort of shapes. But play around, get yourself a number of different teas, flavor, and go for flavors that you like. They have like stuff like vanilla and raspberry flavored, even like rum and whiskey like flavored ones, which are really nice. I like the rum ones and the whiskey ones. And they do stuff like Irish coffee as well, like, which is weird, like Irish coffee and then tea. But yeah, they do all sorts of flavors. But make sure you're going through, get varieties both of fine and coarse, and just experiment with what you feel is better for you to read within the cup, what better you can interpret for you, what shapes and stuff that you're seeing for the cup. So I'll go on to methods. So I'm going to talk about, I'm just going to talk about how I was taught. For the third one is something that I came up with myself over the years, and that's because of the modern age of internet, which is reading for someone from a distance. But the 1 and 2 was basically what I've been taught through my Auntie Nora. And there's a whole ritual you begin. So apparently, according to her, you would put only 3, if it's for yourself, it all depends, but she would say 3 teaspoons for each person. So where's my teaspoon? Yeah, oh sorry, that's my granny's teaspoon as well. I went with it. Oh yeah, it's there. So she would say 3, this is a little bit bigger than a teaspoon. I'm guessing my gran liked very big heapfuls. So yeah, she would say, Auntie Nora would say, well, 3 teaspoons per person. And this is because it represents the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. So 3 person. So really, it really depends. If you've got more than one, like more than 3 people around the table, maybe you want to get a bigger teapot. So yeah, 3 per person, that represents the Trinity. You would leave it steep no more than 7 minutes, no more, no less. 7 every day of the week, every day, the 7 days of the week. And you can also, she said, if there was a specific thing that someone wanted to know, she would say, like, you can whisper, like, open the teapot, the finger, and whisper what you want the teas to tell you about. So you could be like, am I getting that job tomorrow? You know, am I getting that money I'm waiting on? And quickly put it close, like quickly slam it shut. Not slam it shut, but yeah, quickly close the lid, and then you can pour out your tea. And if you can, pour it as far as you can to the top of your cup, right? My Auntie Nora said that she would love to know, and I'll explain this later, she loved knowing the future. So she said she'd laugh and say she'd feel it that high that she would be like on the table sort of sipping a little bit, so that it wouldn't spill all over her. So she'd be like this on the table, like sipping it. That's how far, like, high she would pour the tea in the cup. And then explain why. So, and then you need to let the tea leaf settle. There wasn't really a number of when, like the Trinity and the 7 days a week, but she just basically said let the tea leaf settle, so that and you'll know because all the leaves will just fall to the bottom. So, but when you see in your tea, and you can't see any leaves like flying in the back at the top, you probably find a few after, like, say, like 3-4 minutes. Well, not 4 minutes, but you know, about 2 minutes. You probably see a few, but not many. And so basically, and there's a special way of drinking tea with tea leaves. So you don't want to be like open mouth. And this is something like people were just used to, they just train themselves. And this allows you to not have any kind of nasty tea leaves going in your mouth. So you really need to like drink tea like this. So you'll bring your teeth together and you keep your lips as close as you can, but obviously allowing yourself to drink the tea. So you lift like that. So it basically lips purse, teeth together, and it allows that no sort of any kind of backlash of tea leaves will go back into the cup or be, you know, stopped at your teeth. And you can just discreetly take it away at the table. So there is actually a way of just of actually drinking loose tea, and that's how everyone was sort of just used to drinking tea that way. And I guess like you see in like comedy now when people are like, ooh, like this. Oh yes, and like, oh yeah, and pinky up. So yes, so there's a way, that's the special way of drinking the tea. But before you do that, yeah, so you've done that. Sorry, not with getting confused. So once you've done that, you want to keep a little bit of the tea, like a tiny bit, maybe say 3/4 up towards the cup, so just a tiny bit of tea left. And what you want to do is with the cup and saucer, pop the saucer on top and turn it like so. And then what you want to do is first of all turn the handle towards you, and this is how I was taught. Tap it 3 times at the top and then turn it 3 times. And you might want to, if you've got a specific question, you might want to concentrate your question when you're turning it 3 times. Or if not, just say, tea, you know, please tea, please ancestors, please spirits, or God, give me answers within the tea leaves. And then you want to tap it 3 times again. 1, 2, 3. And then you simply leave it for a minute, and you sort of, you can put your hands over it, you can sort of think to yourself like, and do like a wee prayer or whatever. And then what you can simply do is lift up the tea, and then you can decipher the pictures. Now, I was taught that if from the top, this is why my Auntie Nora used to fill it right to the top, and to the point where she would be at the table sipping it herself to stop her from spilling it. So the top of the rim represents the future, the middle of the cup, the tea of the top, the middle of the cup represents the present, and the bottom represents the past. And basically, and whatever's nearest to the handle, inside nearest to the handle, is more, it's going to be more relevant to you specifically, to yourself. So for example, if you saw some tea leaves that was, I don't know, maybe a branch, or it saw like a tree, it meant that, and it was inside the cup nearest to the handle, it means that you need more growth on yourself. You need to branch out, you need to see better horizons, you need to develop yourself again and really become anew. So shed off, like, you know, shed off them old branches in order to grow new leaves, as my Auntie Nora would say. So if that was that, so that would mean it was something to do with you, because within the leaves, it depends how you're reading it as well. It can be some foretelling someone that's, you know, it's to do with you, but also it can be saying someone else is coming into your life, and we can sort of predict who's coming into your life, or other sort of connections that may appear. So also, so at the bottom, there may be, say, a horse, and it meant that you were in the past, you've been well traveled. And if it was by, you know, shape of a woman, maybe your mother wasn't very good husbands or partners. So it may means that like, you would travel around a lot as a kid, or just was passed around, or you had other relatives. You was a single mother, or your mother was a single mother. And for a man, if it was a male shape, it meant that he would work abroad, he would work farther away. But again, these are old ways that I was taught to me through my Auntie Nora. I have as I've done it throughout the years, over 25 years, the symbology I still use, but it's changed with modern times. So I don't see a man and a horse meaning that your husband's going to go travel away. I would say you're going on a journey, maybe a holiday, depending what's around the horse as well. So if it was like, say, a horse, a man, and what looked like a seashell, it means, oh, you're soon to travel abroad. So I wouldn't be like, yes, the old terms. So it's the way I do it is more relevant of today, as opposed to how my Auntie Nora would see things. And that's because of her time, her time. That's how she read the leaves of her time and how society was back then. And it's as same as folk magic, it changes with the folk. So yes, and and the most closest to also with the future, because a lot of people want to know about the future when they're doing the tea leaves, the most closest to the rim means the most soon it's going to appear. So if it's like, it's for example, a key, and you're waiting on that house move, or you're waiting on the council to do you a transfer, or you're waiting for a house on the council, or just anything, a house, and you saw a key or something that resembled a house, it means that's coming. Like, you're going to get the keys to that house very soon, because it will be close to the rim. It'll be very close to the rim. There's no sex science of like, oh, it's several centimeters down, so it's like this how many years. It wasn't like that. Although some books can be that specific nowadays. But yeah, it really depends on the reader. And then for the present, so the present normally tells you of what you need to improve on, or what your direction you should take. So if it's like, say, let me think, like a wheel, if it came into the shape of a wheel, it means that you should go forward. You're on the right track in life. So you should carry on what you're doing. And then whatever's next to the wheel, which may be, maybe a book, it means that studying, research. So because the wheel's next to the book, it means you're on the right track. Carry on what you're doing, keep on studying, keep on going to uni or college or whatever, and doing your studies, because you're on the right track. So yes, anything that's in the center of inside the cup represents the present, and normally what you need to know now to act for the future, or to mend your past as well. So, and it all depends as well. So they can, readings can also merge into each other, so from past, present, and future. And when this happens, normally you need to go to the root of the problem. There's something from your past that is stopping you from doing something in the present for your future goal. So my auntie will say, always look, my auntie Nora will say, always look for the symbols that connect each other, or they chain to each other, I should say. And that's your first read, and really what you want to tell the person, because if there's any blockages that they want, that is stopping them doing in future goals, they need to sort out the root of the problem that's stopping them from doing it in the present, that's stopping them doing their future goal, or what they inspire to do in the future. So she say, always look for that, and then afterwards, which is not always the case, it's all, they can be separate and spaced out. But if you do come across that, then yeah, I would say that would be the first thing that you want to read to that person. And before rushing in as well, like, really study the cup. Like, the person that you're reading for, I'm sure they're just you know, or for yourself. But if you're reading, I'd start reading for other people first before you start reading yourself. Get some practice under your belt, and you get to learn what's comfortable to you, and you get, by doing practice, you'll pick up little tips that you like, and you know, think your own sort of way. Because like these practices that, you know, there's guidebooks, you know, but it's not like a Bible, you know. It really is your practice, whoever handles the cup or the tea, as my Auntie Nora would say. Whoever handles the cup of the tea has the different art. So and she would say that because if she came across like my gran, that it means that they understand, those who read tea leaves, it means who holds the cup of the tea, the handle of the tea, means that they will have different ways of reading the tea leaves. So that's what it means. So just practice, but I'd say first of all, start, you know, number 2, practice on others. So when you're practicing others, you go with the same methods, of pouring the tea. Obviously, the other person's drinking it, and what you want to do when you're doing for it, because you are the reader, and you see, I didn't talk about the spoon. I mean, honestly, yeah, if you want to stir your cup, I mean, as well, I have milk, and so did my Auntie Nora in her tea, loose tea. So a lot of people are like, oh, like nowadays are very like tea snobs. So they're like, oh no, like milk just ruins the flavor. I have milk. I have a wee drop. I always have a wee drop of tea. Don't know, of milk. I never have too much tea. Same with coffee. So you can have milk in it. So if you want to use that to stir in, but when you're doing it for someone else, you are pouring in the tea and you are stirring the tea, right? And then you handed it to someone. You're handing it to them, and so you're the reader. You're imbuing that sort of, I don't know what my Auntie Nora would say. I think she would probably just say giving your own touch to it, you know, giving your own personal touch to it. But it's basically, you are saying, I'm the reader, I'm going to do it. And obviously, through the person that drinks the tea is who it's going to be for, because it has that, you know, that personal effect, the saliva, and it's, you know, the person who's drinking the tea is who the fortune is for. So that's the only difference really, if you're reading for others, is that you are stirring the cup for them first before giving the cup of tea to them, and then following the same rituals of, you know, afterwards, you know, I'll go for it again, like saucer on top and turn to the right. Sorry, I forgot about this. So turn to the right, never turn to the left. That's always bad luck, and you don't want to put bad luck on someone. It's same as like when you're stirring the tea, always stirring clockwise, never anti-clockwise. It's bad luck, and represents anything that's like the devil, basically, like, you know, the left-hand path. So that's really what you're doing is different, is that you're stirring the tea and then passing it to them. So yes, so the third one, which I do because I do a lot of readings online, and we live in this, again, practices change as time changes, and this is something that I came up with myself, and I'll also go into something else as well, which I do, which I wasn't taught, but I do myself. It's probably inspired by the fortune telling cups, actually, but yes, at distance. So you want to do the same thing. If it's someone from a distance, pour it, whatnot, and you're stirring the cup clockwise, but you're saying their name. Each time you say their name, it's one lighter, like, so I don't know, Michelle Hopkins, Michelle Hopkins, Michelle Hopkins, Michelle Hopkins, and then three times whispering into the cup. So like for me, it's shouting out the presence of that person and then whispering to the cup so that the cup knows who's it's reading for. So yeah, Michelle Hopkins, Michelle Hopkins, Michelle Hopkins, Michelle Hopkins, Michelle Hopkins, Michelle Hopkins, and it's a whisper into the cup. And then just leave it on the side for a good, I'd say a good 10 minutes. Let it go cold, because it's, again, it's not that the cup hasn't have that contact with that person. So the cup really needs to get to know the essence and really brew that in, that you've just whispered the cup into the cup that person's reading for at a distance, and leave it. And I love this as well. So I like to pour it halfway, and then when I leave it for 10 minutes and when I do my reading, it ends up with like a stain, a perfect stain where the present is. So then I know then, like through that circular stain, that's my present, my future's above, my past is below. So that's a good trick. So if you want a good indication, pour it halfway through if you're reading for someone from a distance, and leave it for a good 10 minutes or so, or longer. Just wait for it to go cold, and when you pour it out, you'll find that circular stain, and that is a good way of indicating past, present, and future. So that's how I do it at distance. Also, it's I'll go into, and it probably is inspired by the fortune telling cups, because this wasn't really spoken or talked about by my Auntie Nora. She didn't teach me this. She never really spoke about it. So, and I always wondered afterwards when she passed, I was like, oh, what about the saucer? You know, but traditionally, well, maybe they are, maybe some people within certain families do read what's poured out into the saucer. But I really believe that it's through inspiration of fortune telling cups. That's why I read the saucer. So I read the saucer as well. And you want to, when you do this, you'll still have bits of like tea. So just carefully drain it off into the the sink as much as you can without disturbing the leaves. And to me, it creates a much bigger image. So I always tell the person, this is the underlying problem or the underlying key of your reading. So if it's like a wolf, then it means like, because it's perfect. So they're great, much bigger images. So it could be a wolf, it could be someone flying on a broom, it could be someone riding in a car. It can really, really be quite vivid, the one on the saucer. So if it's a wolf, it means the underlying issue or meaning to all your reading is that you just need to get a little bit strength, a little bit more courage in order to fulfill out these goals, or to overcome past trauma or memories, or to really get for that future goal. So I always use that. So I always say the what's on the saucer is the underlying issue or underlying prominent, what's prominent to your reading of the cup. I think I did get inspiration from the fortune telling cups, really. But I'd love to see if other family taught like myself did read from the saucer, because my Auntie Nora really didn't mention anything about the saucer. It was just put on the side, and then the cup, read from the cup. So we're going to like symbology, so learning symbols. I was just taught, actually, before I go into this, I was just taught quite basic symbols by my Auntie Nora. But as I got older, I want to, so there's so much of like, oh, a tree, like that means growth, and oh, a key, or it means like a house, or a lucky horse tree, or it's luck, or a marriage, or you get a bit bored. And I suppose, and that's how traditional fortune telling was. It was very simplistic, and it was very straightforward like that. But as I got older and stuff, I wanted to be more advanced into it, I guess. I guess, like, from Auntie Nora, my granny, by that age, it's something quite fun to do, really. But I guess through generations before her, maybe there was much more to it, and it was a lot more serious. But by the time my granny and my Auntie Nora, it was something fun that they did round the table, and they just so happened to both know how to do it from different sides of the family. But yeah, as I got older, I wanted to be a bit more advanced with it, and at the time I didn't really find anything when I was 13. So, but I did find dream books, Book of Dreams. And so what I did is I looked at the symbology for dreams and stuff like that. And it can be stuff like rings and seen a door and all that, and incorporate that into tea leaf reading. And I found that a lot more successful because even if when you see modern tea leaf reading today, it is just basic stuff like the sun, the moon, a tree, like still like what you see now is the 1940s, but a little bit more in depth in the meaning. Whereas like dream books is like very specific. So it's very much like, oh, if you dream us, standing on a broken chair or something like that, it means this. So, and the cup can be very, like, if you look at it, the cup isn't very, not at times is not very simplistic in the symbology. So if it did look like someone standing on a chair and it's only one-legged, it's a broken chair, I would then look at the dream book and see what that meaning was. So I really did advance myself through just books of, dream books before I went on to fortune telling books. So yes, as you see here, just examples of traditional ways. So like, for example, tree, a triumph for you to be near in future. A tree signifies plenty, but some effort must be made before you gather in your fruits of your efforts. Oh, good. For example, a wheel. Don't be too impatient at the daily round. Stick to your job and you will be healthy and successful. Very similar to my Auntie Nora, she would say you're on the right track, keep going, see what an umbrella says, because umbrella used to be seen as good looking, unlucky, according to my family. So an outstanding, you'll mean a great deal in your life. To on marriage, or sometimes means that a proposal, or to be married, an offer will be placed on you in better circumstances. So you can see this is the kind of, I mean, when you go to like earlier than that, it's very simplistic. It's like, you may have a visitor today, and it's very much like that. And then so it's getting a bit more advanced as to the 40s when it comes to the 1940s, but again, it's more reflecting the time. So you really want to get a good sort of modern tea leaf reading book. But I thought this would be nice for everyone to have, to sort of look at the past of how these booklets were, these tea leaf fortune telling cups. So yeah, I'll do an example. So this is an example of my own sort of tea leaf, and if you can see here, and I've done this just for an example for my Etsy, you can see the stain ring here. So I've left it for long, and that indicates where my future, my present, and my past is. So we see in this cup, like you can see here straight away, a crane, a tumbling rock, because it looks like a cliff and a rock coming off, and a little bit of debris here. Oh, God's sake, a little bit of debris here falling off the rock cliff. You see, a head and a right arm here. Right is a really good indication of good luck. You're on the right track. A pointing finger here. So this is really good. So if you see stuff like a pointing finger, yes, it could be means like, that is the way, but also that pointing finger could indicate on the cup what you most should look at. So here, and we can see there's more stumbling rocks. So foundations need to be re-established here, and growth is needed. Again, read what I do, read in the cup, and you can see what I mean, the difference. Little tiny reading symbology that you can just read together as a story, and each one is sort of connected to other or individually, depending where on the cup. In this case, there's nothing to the handle, so there's nothing to yourself that needs sort of improvement or need something you need to know personally. So you'll see the difference as well on the saucer. It is a bird. It is two birds in a nest, so it can be more. So you can see here, like I've done it. I've inverted the colors so you can see it better. So you can see like a wee beak here, a big bit, like, so I see it as like a mother nursing her chick in a nest, really. So you can see like the nest here, you can see the breast of the little chick here, and then another bird sort of hurdling the sort of the bird, and then little tiny birds flying off here. So someone needs to fly the nest and needs to cut them apron strings. So we'll go into, so in that interpretation, this is, I'm always doing this. So the past, tumbling rock off a cliff. This is my interpretation of how I read the people. A tumbling rock off a cliff represents something of trauma and dramatic change of a negative result. The crane rising above the fall, and the small rocks at the crane's leg mean that you had a near miss traumatic event. Base of the cup, the presence, the rocks at the crane's head, that is always, although it didn't affect you physically, it has mentally in the present, the base of the cup. This is because the nearest to the handle denotes that the divination is referring to you specifically. Now, moving anti-clockwise around the cup, there are two stones standing separately apart, denoting that there was a bad breakup or family separation. The top of the cup, the future. Starting clockwise with the pointing finger denotes that you have a great awareness of event. The separation of the right hand and the right facing head means that there is soon to be time where you have to make a decision similar to the situation. God, I wrote this and I can't read it. The right hand direction often denotes a good outcome. So you will learn from your harsh decisions of the past and make a decision which is beneficial to you. And it will make you happier in life to change of attitude. However, with the separation of the head and the torso/arm, you must be a balance with making a decision with both your head and your heart. So that's an example from what I did of doing the tea leaf, and this I've wrote down my interpretation as if what I would get from it if I was reading that tea leaf. So you can get a sort of a gist of how things are, but I think a good tea leaf reading book is really good as well. But the way you get to it's like tarot and any kind of divination practice, it's practice makes perfect, and you come up with your own tips. What sort of tea that you prefer, loose or fine, you know, how you like to do it. You might come up with little rituals yourself that you prepare in the cup of a mystical sort of way. Prayers, it really depends. It's really down to you through practice that you come to learn to read the tea leaves. So here's some that I firmly recommend. So after I have the first one here, and that's a bit of history. So after I started, like I said, I originally started reading dream books for the symbology for the cup. But when I came into my first few years of secondary school or high school, I found in the library, my school library, this. And this is brilliant. Gillian Kemp is a brilliant author. She's legitimately comes from a Romani sort of family, or Romani family, and she also does this is a really cool book as well, which is called The Good Spell Book, Love Charms, Magical Cures and Other Practical Sorcery. And it's spells and well, charms and spells and oils, some based off her own sort of thoughts, but a lot of it is through her family, like charms and spells for a traveling family. So she does that. It's a neat little book. I love it. And the spells in there are quite effective. I've had this for so many years. But yeah, so this is the first one, and it's brilliant. Like, not only just to tell about tea leaves, and it's like little images like this. I love how they portray the images. That the images actually look like. Let me show. Oh, that's about dreams as well. So it's also dream interpretation, which is brilliant. That's probably why I loved it so much, because it had dream interpretation as well as tea leaf, reading the tea leaves. I love it because like the pictures to them just kind of look like they're tea leaves in a cup. Let's see. R, and it goes alphabetical. So it's probably why I loved it so much, my 15-year-old self, to the point where I stole it. Yes, I know. Yes, it was really bad, but basically, yes, it's really bad. I wouldn't do that now. But again, I came from um, barely scratching working class family, and books were just not on the budget. So yeah, I never told my mom that. I told her that it was from a book, you know, because they do like, you know, when libraries do like bookstores, you know, book sales and stuff on their old books. I just told her it was like from the school book crate that they were selling off old books and stuff. So I never told her that. So it even has like the wee stamp in there for my school. But yeah, what I love about it is what it also tells you the old, what I was talking about earlier is the old language of flowers. So the what each flower means if you're given to someone or you come across a flower, or what a flower means on a you know, cup saucer. So it talks about the language of flowers. It's a brilliant little book. And it really is good. It really is a good beginner's book, and I just think it's brilliant. I think that's why I loved it so much, because I started off with dream interpretation to read the cup in advance, and then so this had both dream interpretation and tea leaves. So I was like, I can just use it both. So it was great. The next one, which is more if you want more of a kind of Scottish sort of way of reading tea leaves, is reading tea leaves: a modern mystic's guide to tea leaf reading divination, by a Highland seer. Now I don't know, I'm a bit skeptical on this. Well, it's not that skeptical. There's not many proof. So it's originally published by the Modern Mystic Library, which was something that started in the early 19th century, and they had wrote down accounts from this Highland seer who wanted to be anonymous, and told them how he read the tea leaves. But you can still buy this book today. But I'm always, it's not that I don't believe it, I'm always just really skeptical if those anonymous people, like there's a Highland seer, but didn't want to tell me his name and stuff, because I'm like, well, even people like Alexander Carmichael, that was recording spells and charms and stuff for the Highlands, they gave their name. They didn't have an issue with that. And but yeah, I always get skeptical of that. Another one that's really good, and a lot more modern, although you probably get more modern ones than today, but it was modern for me during my 20s, is Tea Leaf Reading: Discover the Future in Your Bottom of Your Cup by Jacqueline Towers. That's a really good book. It goes into a kind of how-to, a very practical guide into doing it. And another one at the next, which I really recommend, and I had these, I bought a few of them on wholesale and sold them on my store. So they did quite well. So I might buy them again on wholesale and sell them on my store. It's the card ones, and I find they're really brilliant. Like palmistry cards as well, and tea leaf cards. I find it easier to learn how to use them, because opposed to just flipping to a book, you can pick out a card and say, this week I'm going to learn what the beetle means in a cup. Or, you know, if you're doing palmistry ones as well, this week I'm going to learn what the heart line means. So I find the cards really useful as a better learning tool for today's sort of tea leaf reading. For today's tea leaf reader. And I kind of did a test run of buying some from the wholesale, and it did really well. So I might start stocking them again, these tea leaf reading cards. But yeah, I just find that for today's, like, it's a lot more easier way to learn it by heart, to learn your symbology by heart, and you can just like pick out a card, like I said, today I'm going to learn what a ring means, or what a beetle means, or or this week, or depending on how quick your learning is. But yeah, I would fully recommend these as a starter. Perhaps the reading the tea leaves by Highlander Seer is a lot more advanced. So maybe that's something you could look into later on. But definitely these two by Gillian Kemp and Jacqueline Towers would be to start on reading, and obviously the tea leaf reading cards to as a more practical way of remembering the symbology of the cups. And then maybe you want it as an advance, I would go into reading the tea leaves by a Highland Seer. It is good, it really is a good book, but again, like, I'm always skeptical when, you know, people are anonymous, especially in today's world. But yes, so that comes to the end of the talk, the course. Hope you all enjoyed it. I will close the share, and if anyone has any kind of questions, I'll do like sort of 5-minute question time and stop the when I can stop the share. So right, and I will look at the chat box. If any of you have any questions, like, yeah, I'm free to sort of like answer them.
Yes,
But
I
if
was
not, then
thinking.
I'm always available for email or on my social media. If you've got a question about something, always feel free to bob me a message. I'll always reply back. I'm always happy to answer anyone.
Yeah, I was thinking about the. Can't you hear me?
I can't hear you. Hang on, have
Oh,
I muted? Hang on one sec. I might have muted it. Yes, I'm muted. Yes, go ahead.
can you hear me now?
Yes, it's actually me. It's probably
Fantastic.
why I didn't hear it. Had the woman go, "You're now recording."
Yes.
Yeah, I was on mute.
So good. Yes, I was thinking actually, because as you said, now there's so many type of teas with flavors and stuff. Would it be interesting maybe to use this for readings, like for instance, having a rose tea when you're doing a reading about love, especially, like kind of infuse the symbolism of the herb in the tea into what you're gonna do. That's the type
Oh,
of reading you're gonna have.
I never really thought of it that way, but yeah, definitely, and that is quite juicy. But yeah, like, or you know, add a bit of honey to it if it's a bit something sweet you want to know about, or yeah, I mean, if you're a tea lover, like I said, I don't really have tea that much, but if we do, it's always loose tea. Because it's strong. But yeah, like if you're into your teas and different flavors of teas, definitely. And something I never thought of, yeah, you could use a rose tea or a violet tea for something to do with matters of love. So if someone wanted a specific reading, you could be like, oh, try this rose tea.
So even like, you know, like off it, when you do tarot reading and you have different decks and you kind of match the deck with the person you're going to do the reading for.
Yeah.
Like you could also pick a tea, like you think that this is the tea for that person.
Yes,
Do you
or
think
even that,
also?
yeah, like really going, and that's the beauty of practicing and just trial and error, is because you learn your own sort of way of reading the leaves, like you do with tarot, like you do with any divination, really. As you practice it, as you're doing it and practicing and reading for others, you pick up your own way, and that's brilliant. Yeah, definitely. You're like, oh, yeah, this person needs calamine flavored, or this person needs whiskey tasted flavor, you know, Irish coffee. Definitely. Or even like, like you said, the meanings of the flavors as well. So I
Yes.
never thought of it like this, but yeah, definitely. And it's something that is food for thought. I'm definitely going to think about now.
Now that you said whiskey tea, I'm even thinking like, shall we spike the tea? Like maybe
Yeah. Or like spike them when they're not looking. But also, drink is associated with social circles, socializing. So maybe it's, if they want to know if they're going to meet new friends at college or they've moved to a different area, you're like, try a whiskey tea, associate with socializing. And I mean, you wouldn't want a tobacco although gladly no one really smokes properly now. But you wouldn't
Could
want
have a
to.
Lapsang Souchong. If you
What?
have a Lapsang Souchong tea,
Oh yeah, yeah.
smoky tea.
Yeah,
There you
of course.
go.
Yeah. So yeah, like the different things, like it's what symbolizes for you and what is symbolizes today's social circles and culture. Like I said, if you look at, that's why I wanted to send this free pamphlet, because it gives you an idea of how they're like all divinations, it's related to the time. So you might see very rigid stuff like, oh, for a woman it means that you need to clean more in the house, and for a man you need to work hard and toughen up yourself, and you know, stop, no more tears, you know. So it really does. So I would say definitely look at the old ones for like sort of traditional methods of practice, like the rituals involved in preparing. That's really good. But yeah, look for more modern sort of interpretations of that's more related to today's society. Like I said, the one that I won by Jacqueline Towers, that's just something that I learned in my 20s. I'd probably be interested in reading more modern material now today, because the world has changed. So you know, regards to like you know, LBGT and gender and all that. So always go with the modern sort of interpretations of any kind of divination. But yeah, I didn't think of it like that. That's brilliant. It's definitely something I'm going to be thinking about. But yeah, and also another thing I never told people is, like, for you, pick yourself a spoon that you like. Pick yourself. I mean, I get this is for my grands, but I have got another spoon that I use, and it's because it's got a windmill on it, and my name's Mills, so son of the mill. Yeah. But yeah, pick the spoon that represents you. You know, kind of see the spoon as like your wand, if you use wands in your magical practice. But pick a spoon that represents you, because it really is the spoon that stirs the tea. So I forgot to mention that. It just came to my mind. Probably my Auntie Nora going, "Don't remember the spoon. Remember the spoon. It's all about the spoon."
I do have a spoon that is especially for when I put tea in my teapot, so
yeah,
that might become the one.
exactly, and I guess it does. Like, to someone who is more mystical minded, and definitely my Auntie Nora, and from what I heard, my granny was. You're the spoon is the stirrer. It is the one that puts the tea into there. It is the one that stirs the tea. It's the one that helps sieves the, you know, the juices from the last bit of the tea into the sink. So yeah, like, yeah, pick a spoon that represents you.
I was wondering, did you have the opportunity at all? Because you said, of course, that in Asia they would have different ways of reading. Have you encountered any list of symbolism that was more like Asian
No,
for
I
reading
haven't.
tea?
Believe it, this is something I want to do for a while now and not got round to. But I believe there is books out there that are based on more Eastern ways of reading the tea leaves, and they're probably very similar to like the symbology that the Turkish and the you know, the Greeks sort of do it. But yeah, I think that there is books out there of more traditional methods from, you know, the way the Chinese do it, or if you want to do coffee with the way the Turks do it, or the Greeks. But it's something I have always wanted to sort of look into, and I've never got round to. So maybe, yeah, you've picked up something I've wanted to do for ages, and I'll be looking. But no, I don't know any books actually, and traditional methods through China and all that, how to learn it. But I'm sure there's got to be.
Must be.
Yeah. Because that's where it sort of stems from, and they still do it today, you know, and they use like, you know, I believe it's more green tea that they sort of read it from. Neve. But yeah, there's got to be books out there. But yes, if all do, I will, if there's any more questions, I will set off because I'm going to have a late night snack because I'm starving. And my partner's home and he's been very careful not to make noise. Right.
Well, thank you very much for the course. That was very good.
No, neighbor, I always enjoy it, and I always enjoy your presence and everyone else as well. So yes, over and out, and blessings to you all, and stir that cup and see what that's in there, what lies at the bottom of the cup.